I feel okay. I feel like this needs to be different because I need my phone to be closer to my computer. Okay, there we go. Now I can see comments. Okay, we are going to be doing a journaling practice today about the concept of both and I'm gonna explain that here in a second once we give people a chance to log on. Journaling is a big part of my self-care practice. I did this guided journaling for the first time last week with Tonic Dayton, which is a local nature bar in my town of Dayton, Ohio. And it went really well, and it was also really, really good for me. So I thought, why not? We're in this weird time of quarantine, so any connection that we can have from one another and any way that we can encourage each other to practice some self-care is important. My cats are entering and leaving entering and leaving the room. So hang on one sec. They just wanted to say hello. So the whole concept of self-care, I think often we think of like spa or bubble baths or drinking a glass of wine with your favorite movie. And while that is absolutely self-care, there's another aspect of self-care which focuses more on the idea of doing our inner work and holding space for ourselves. We often hold space for everyone else, and very rarely do we spend the time that we need or the time that we spend on other people on holding space for our own feelings and our own emotions and really just what it means to be human, our humanness. So this journaling practice that I've been actively journaling for a few years now, and I find it for me to work really well as far as like prioritizing that space for my feelings and who I am, and holding space for my own emotions and my own experiences. And that in like, because I've held that space for myself and I've filled my cup, I'm able to then hold space for other people better. So if you have your journal or a piece of paper or whatever, I would suggest turning to 2 blank pages. So like, for example, well, you can see through on this, but I like wrote on this page and this page was blank. So I would turn to like 2 blank pages because we're going to use both. And I like them to be side by side. And we're going to be talking about the concept of both and this basically just comes to, this really means feeling multiple feelings at once, that as humans, we're able to feel multiple big emotions at the same time. We're not Tinkerbell. We can't only hold one emotion at once. And really encouraging the understanding of that, and through that finding balance in our feelings. Oftentimes when we feel really strongly about something, there is balance in that. And this idea of balance or homeostasis within the self, it's not a passive experience. Finding balance is really like something that you practice. It's a practice. So we're going to be talking about feeling both and really this comes down to like things we can feel at the same time. So like an example is we can experience grief and fear and anger and sadness and loneliness and all of those things that we might be experiencing right now because of the situation that we're in, and even outside of the situation that we're in. But I think this is important to talk about now, obviously, because of everything going on. So experiencing, the fear and the grief and the heartache and everything, but we can also at the same time still experience joy and connection and gratitude and presence. So really this journaling exercise is a way to look into us and kind of realize the balance of those feelings that we're having. So if you at the top of your page, I know it's back, I think it's backwards on Instagram, but on Facebook. So just put I feel, and then this column, like kind of think of it as columns. It's like both, and then you write whatever. And I would just encourage you to write like 5 to maybe 7 both and feelings. So to provide you an example, one of mine is I feel both grateful that Tony is still working and worried about his health. Or, I feel both really happy to be home. I feel really very cozy and very happy to be like my only child self in my house by myself. But I also feel super lonely. And all I want to do is like hug my friends. And I feel both of those at the same time. It's not like they take turns. And another one that's really big for me right now is I feel both really grounded in my routine, my day-to-day routine, but I feel like I'm floating in this like unknown of kind of our society or the whole world right now of like when can I start working again, or what is my life going to look like in a month from now. So you can, when you identify, because I think often we try to compartmentalize things like, or excuse things like, I'm feeling really sad and lonely, or I'm feeling afraid for, my finances or whatever. But then I'm like, but like I have food on my table and there are so many things that I should be grateful for. So I push that feeling away. When in reality, your feelings are valid, just like my feelings are valid. And so understanding that's a great both and example. Like I feel afraid for what my life is going to look like in the future, but I still feel grateful for what I do have. So on your page, I encourage you to do, like I said, like maybe 5 to 8 of both and you can get started while I just chat away. And I would also encourage you, when you write, like I feel both this and that, draw a line between the two columns because it connects those feelings. Because in reality, what you're feeling is our English language likes to really like, this is this and that is that. But our feelings, our emotions, they don't speak English. So when we are feeling something, we're using our language to describe it. So I'm feeling both joyful and grief. I'm attributing my own language to that feeling, what that actually feels like, or happy and sad at the same time, or love and loss at the same time. We're using our language to describe a feeling. So when we draw the line between the two thoughts, we link those emotions into the actual feeling that is like within us. And as you write these, I really encourage you to like, it's really, we're go all the time. Like social media, notifications, we're doing like all these things at the same time. And we don't slow down. So it could be really easy to be like, okay, I feel this and this and this and this, blah, 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 blah. And then done, did my 5, whatever, let's move on. I encourage you to really feel what it feels like when you write that down. I feel like maybe you're feeling really grateful to spend so much time with your family or your spouse or your kids right now, but also really overwhelmed with their constant presence. Feel that. Feel what it feels like to be really grateful that your family is healthy and at home, but also allow yourself to feel the tension between that and the, oh my God, I'm going to kill them if they, if they poke me one more time, or if they come in and I hear mom one more time, or, you know, my husband asks me what's for lunch one more time, or wife. So really let yourself feel the conflict of those two things, and then put that line in between to join them. And if anyone wants to share anything that they're feeling, both and, part of this practice, why doing it together is really great, is because we can share and normalize what we're going through. When we share how we're feeling, other people don't feel so alone in the feelings that they have that could be the same or similar. I might feel completely isolated. Well, all of us, I'm sure, in some form or fashion, feel isolated right now. And when we are able to connect to people right now, it's only virtually, but when we can say like, oh, I understand that feeling, or someone shares what they're feeling and we're able to identify with it, it brings us, like, it really connects our hearts. It really connects us on a level that is beyond just Facebook comments. So if anyone feels like sharing, I would love that. I'm on both Instagram and Facebook, so I'll read them and then we can talk about it if you want. So we're gonna give like 2 more minutes to really sit with this idea of the conflict between feeling both and. I think we also can feel really heartbroken about what's going on in the world right now. I know that I can't watch one of those, I don't know, I think it was Good Morning America put on like a commercial with the song Rise Up, like, and I rise up. I freaking bawled my eyes out. Like, it's uplifting and, you know, strength, but I was so heartbroken that these people had to show up in that way, and that they were willing to. And so that's like a good example of a feeling of being really heartbroken, but also overwhelmed with like gratitude and awe of humanity and of what people are willing to do to sacrifice their own well-being or their own health to serve people around them, or people, complete strangers. So we can feel heartbroken, but also feel like really recognize the beauty of what's going on right now. I think that's a big thing for me, is really recognizing that in the midst of this heartache, when this started, I was afraid. I was thinking that the world was going to end and people were going to be the worst versions of themselves and steal food. And I was very uncomfortable. And in reality, seeing people put teddy bears in their windows and paint rainbows on the sides of their houses and draw inspiring messages on the sidewalk with chalk, I still feel heartbroken that we're here, but I am like, I recognize how beautiful humanity is treating each other right now. So once you finish, here, I'll kind of show you mine. So it should look like both, and then the line, and. Then on your second page, so I did this in Sharpie so you can see it. On this page, what I would suggest doing is taking the feeling words. So, for example, I feel both happy to be home and anxious to go out again. Take just the feeling words, happy and anxious, and I want you to write them, but backwards, the way that you wrote it in the first sentence. So for I feel both happy to be home and anxious to go out again, I would then write, I feel both anxious and happy. And I want you to take your time and go down the list of, you know, of your conflicting feelings, And the reason that I want you to flip them is because there are two things that often happen. One, we prioritize what our society tells us we should be feeling, which in Western society, we prioritize joy and happiness. And that's part of what this conversation is too, is there's so much content out there right now about finding joy and seeking happiness and finding joy in quarantine and seeking happiness in quarantine. And when we push this narrative that regardless of circumstances, we should always be happy, always be joyful, when in reality, happiness and joy, they're fleeting emotions. They're really up here emotions, just like sadness, anger. They're not sustainable emotions. They're not emotions that like really carry us for a long time. The emotions that carry us for a long time are emotions like contentment. They might be emotions like depression or numbness. And so what I want to change the narrative of is, instead of, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to find joy. We shouldn't appreciate joy when we have it. But I think that there's something deeper when we look for contentment in our circumstances. And this comes from, a gratitude practice, or this comes from connecting to people and being aware of the good things that we have. But that doesn't mean that we're seeking up here joy and happiness all the time, because again, that's just not a sustainable emotion. Those moments are fleeting, right? So when we flip, usually, like I noticed in mine, I put all of the things that I was happy or positive about on one side, and then the conflict of like anxious, overwhelmed, angry, frustrated on like the and side. And that's because I don't allow myself to feel those as much as I push to feel happiness and joy and gratitude and grounding. Because yes, that's who I want to be. And so there is a part of that. But at the same time, if I never give these what are deemed as negative emotions, but I would say that they're just as fair. When I push those away, or when I've always put them in the back seat, I'm never confronting them. And how can I ever let something go if I never confront it? So in this activity of taking these feelings, these conflicting feelings, and flipping them. So instead of, I feel both grateful that Tony has work and worried for his health, when I flip it and I just say, I feel worried and grateful, that allows me to give a little bit more space for that worry, which I'm allowed to do that. That's part of being human. These are human emotions. When I feel like I'm grounded in my routine, but I'm floating in a pool of unknown, when I flip it and I say, I feel both like I'm floating and grounded, I open myself to a better understanding of that feeling of floating. I allow myself to feel it. And in that, I allow myself to let that go. Hi, Lisa. I allow myself to let that go and to experience that, instead of constantly pushing it away with tasks or with joyful activities. And don't get me wrong, again, like everything is balanced. And for me, like I have a joy list. I search for joy every single day. I do at least one thing every single day that I know without a doubt will bring me joy. That can be cooking. That can be snuggling my cats. That can be drinking a glass of wine at the end of the day. That can be, I have a list of like 20 things, and I pick one every single day to make sure that I do something that brings me joy. But when I don't allow myself to feel worried, angry, anxious, like I'm floating, I push those away and I run to those joy activities. Suddenly those activities don't bring me so much joy, because I've turned them into this negative, like this unhealthy coping mechanism. Like I have to do something so I can stop feeling this way. When in reality, if we allow ourselves to put that uncomfortable feeling first, not dwell on it, but just be mindful that it's there, we can briefly ponder it, and then we have so much more space to let it go or to work through it or to, you know, seek help about it or to reach out to someone about it. Holly said, I also look at emotions as resistance. Emotions are on a scale from empowering and disempowering, not necessarily positive and negative. I love that so much. That's so true. And it kind of goes with what I was saying earlier about I don't think that feelings like anger, sadness, grief, the things that we attribute as negative emotions, those can even be empowering. I've experienced, I don't know if anyone else has, so like feeling angry and then getting something done from that anger, realizing this is what makes me angry, and then having inspiration to move through and to resolve whatever made me angry. She said, so worry or cautious is empowering. Acknowledgement of something rather than allowing it to turn into anxiety, fear, and despair, which is a lack of empowerment. Absolutely. Super great point. And Holly, I think you came in a little late. So basically what our activity is, and Lisa, you as well, we're doing both and journaling. So in your like 2 columns, there is like, I feel both one emotion or one thing about something and the opposite. So the example I used was, I feel both grateful that Tony's still working and worried for his health, or I feel both happy to be home and anxious to go out again. Really understanding the conflict of emotion there and understanding that we are attributing our language to describe that feeling, but in reality, they're linked. I don't think it's 2 feelings. I think that we're feeling what we're feeling, and then we're trying to use our mind to and to really take care of ourselves and kind of deconstruct the ideas that deconstruct these feelings in a way that is empowering, Holly, is to then flip them. So flip the feeling words. So like instead of I feel both happy to be home and anxious to go out, I would flip it to I feel both anxious and happy. And the other reason that I want to do this, or that's good to do this, is if we feel really strongly negatively right now, if we're really struggling, our lists might look like I feel both, and our first feeling is going to be afraid. I feel grief, I feel fear, I feel worried, I feel cautious, I feel, all of those really like pit of your stomach feelings that make you kind of feel sick to your stomach. And if we're experiencing that right now, if that's the world we're living in, then we need to flip and we need to put those joy words first. We need to put the gratitude first, and the happy first, and the joyful first, and the grounded first, and the positive first, just so we can allow our hearts a little space. We are allowed to feel both happy and sad, and that doesn't alter our contentment. That's why I was saying earlier about the idea of joy, happy, that we're constantly told that we should feel that all the time, that isn't sustainable because those aren't stable emotions. Lisa says that she feels both connected and isolated. Absolutely. Absolutely. So then what happens if you flip it and you say that you feel both isolated and connected? How does that feel differently when you say that or when you write that? And so with the sustainable contentment, which is that's what I seek, is contentment in all circumstances. Another sustainable or like kind of stable emotion that's on the kind of opposite, maybe the like the not like the opposite of the empowerment of contentment is like depression. So if you're feeling consistently depressed, that is I guess you could say like a stable emotion. So there's contentment, which regardless, like think of it as like in the middle, and you feel happy and you feel sad and you feel happy and you feel sad and you feel happy. But then like the average line is contentment. If you're feeling super low, then you're feeling sad, 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 and a little happy, and sad, 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 and a little bit happy. But that's like the consistent, you can feel happy if you are struggling from depression. I think there's a big misconception. Just like you can feel grief and content while you are content with life circumstances. Lisa said when isolated is her first, between like connected and isolated, her belly sinks. Absolutely, mine too. I think though that when we give ourselves that room to feel that, and when we give ourselves the ability to share that with other people, that connects us, right? I mean, just now, I know that feeling, Lisa. I know that feeling of, I had it today. I had a really bad afternoon today. I was feeling super low and I felt super alone. And I was just, all I wanted to do was hug someone. And, you know, my husband's working all day during the week. And all I wanted was like a friend to not just talk to on the phone, but to just see their face, see, you know, feel their arms around me. So when we give ourselves that space to feel, though, I allowed myself to feel that isolated, not for a long time. I didn't dwell in it, but just acknowledge, like, yeah, you know what? I do feel that way right now. I feel really low. And then I was able to say, like, okay, well, I let myself feel that, and I'm gonna go now. And I'm gonna go back to being like feeling grateful that I can call people or that I can see people on social media. But flipping it and allowing ourselves space to feel the second emotion that we label opens us up, whether that be positive or negative or a mixture of both. So that's pretty much it. Feel free to reach out or comment later. I'll look at comments and things later this evening. And I think that I'm going to do this again next Tuesday because why not? It holds me accountable to do this work too. So it was really nice to talk to you guys. I hope that you have a wonderful evening. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Bye Instagram and bye Facebook.